Hello, welcome to the first hand joinery video. Hopefully, yeah. Note to self: write a rough script, making things easier. That's right. Already fucking it up. My personal drinking game is anytime I need to restart my shot, I take a drink. You folks at home should take a drink anytime I say or any one of those variations. This is the first of hopefully many how many times am I going to say Try this again. My name's Neil Cronk of the Cronkwright Woodshop. For a while on Twitter and then eventually Instagram, I was doing hand joinery tutorials with the hashtag hand joinery. Started out as sort of a joke of doing sort of more complex joints, trying to get stumped. And then people asked me to do joints that were a little bit simpler, so they could follow along and increase their hand joinery skills. Did that for a while. And then I just kind of get out of the habit, two small children, trying to pay a mortgage, being a craftsman and a renovator. It's hard to find time, and also I am supremely lazy and a huge procrastinator. I've been saying I'm going to do this video for a little while now, and I've been saying I'm going to do videos for almost a year now. So my friend Brian McCauley of McCauley's Design, he's been doing some videos and about dovetails and trying to learn to do dovetails. So I told him I'd shoot a little video to help him out, and I figured, lots of other people out there might want to learn to either, learn to cut dovetails or, refine their technique. So I thought I'd make a little video here. Most of it's going to be sort of close up on the bench shots. I thought I'd start out here with a quick little introduction and a quick overview of the joint. Most people know dovetails. This one's one I cut for just a demonstration for a craft sale that I was invited to demonstrate at. So the tail board here is in pine, and then the pin board is in walnut. So I was doing these for demonstration, so I thought the contrast was nice for people to see. A little bit easier for people on the YouTube here to see as well. So I'm a tails first woodworker. Some people cut them pins first. Personally, I've only ever found pins first to be helpful for full blind dovetails, which hopefully if I keep doing these videos and I want to, and please if you find the videos helpful, to let me know and hopefully encourage me to keep going with these. I lost my thought there. Maybe this is why most people write scripts, but this is the first one, so I'm just gonna kind of go. So I cut tails first. As I said before, I have my stock here. This is just some regular old clear pine with lots of it here in Canada. So this one piece here, another piece clamped down on the bench to cut a shallow rabbet on the back of the tailboard, which is a pretty common practice with a lot of woodworkers. So I'm not sure if you can see there, it's a very shallow rabbet on the end board. So it's just maybe a 32nd of an inch shallower on the very end. That's the thickness of the pin board. So what we'll do first is we'll cut that rabbet, and then we'll lay out our the tail board here. We'll cut the tail board with our the dovetail saw. Then some people will just chop the waste out with a chisel. I prefer to use a fret saw, or some people can use a coping saw like the fret saw because it gets right down the curve. I can cut that out with one little pass. Clean up the board, and then what that rabbet allows us to do is it registers against the inside of the pin board. So when I go to transfer the tail board, which is our pattern for the pins, I can just take my marking knife and then with the pieces in the vise, that rabbet allows me to just lock that in place, and I don't have to worry about this tail board sliding all over the place as I'm trying with my little knife here to transfer that pattern. So I guess we'll transfer that, and then I'll cut the pin board, and then there'll probably be a little bit of paring, a little bit of messing around, and then we'll just hammer it home. So let's get going with the rabbet. So there's lots of different ways you could cut this rabbet. On the back, you can cut it with router table with a rabbeting bit. On your table saw with a dado stack, with the board flat on the table. You could bury a rip fence or a rip blade into a sacrificial fence and then run that upright. The blade height being the thickness of the wood. What I like to do is use a skew block plane. There's no depth stop on this, like a bunch of other rabbet planes or moving filisters, things like that. I just take 2 passes or so. I could set up the nicker, but I usually just set up a marking gauge. This one's a nice little one made by Jeff Hamilton, African Blackwoods, really nice little gauge. Picked this up at Woodworking in America. So I just set the gauge up to be a little bit thicker than the thickness of the board. And then what I'll do is just take a couple passes. It's always nicer to take a couple light passes rather than one deep pass. So I usually push, or pull and then push. Just nice crisp shoulder. And then my skew block plane's already been set up for the width of cut here, but it's just a simple adjustment with the fence. So I just take a nice couple little passes. Nothing too serious, just a little bit to register it. So with that rabbet cut and everything else cleared out of the way, I'll then use the same setting to mark the shoulders and then the outside face, all with the same gauge set to the same depth. The shoulders, I make sure I get a nice crisp, deep, clean line because those are really going to define where this board meets up with the pin board, and a gap in that corner here is one of the harder parts to get rid of later on as you start really refining how you do this. I'll take a really deep pass on the face because I don't like that knife line really showing up after the dovetails have been cut and everything's been cleaned up. So I take a nice little light pass for now. Just for the sake of the video, I'll put a little bit of a pencil line there so everyone at home can see it. And then I'll just clamp it into my vise. I'll change the camera angle, and then I'll show you how I lay everything out. I guess I forgot to mention that one of the reasons I like doing a lot of joinery by hand is I can listen to music, but also I can enjoy a nice adult beverage. This one's a great one here. It's Boxing Rock's The Vickers Cross, a nice double IPA from right here in Nova Scotia. So when I clamp my dovetails into my vise, my bench top's level-ish, so I like to take a square and actually just put the square on the board as I fit it in. That way it just helps with sawing consistency, I find. Maybe making that same angle. This one's I usually stick to 1 to 4 or about 14 degrees here. So I'll just go ahead and lay this out. I don't really like the whole 1 to 7, 1 to 8, or 1 to 6, whatever those silly numbers are. I'm kind of committed to 14 degrees or this 1 and 4. This nice little Christian Groves dovetail gauge. I just find the kind of nice and bold. I find those sort of 1 to 8s just kind of bland and just looks like a machine cut them. I'm going through all this trouble to make them by hand. I don't want them to look like a machine. So the first thing I do is mark out the half pin, as it's called here. So we have these full pins, and then at the very corner we have a half pin. So the distance here is what we're measuring. For this stock here is about 1/2 inch. Sort of standard, drawer size, which is where a lot of the dovetails are going to be used in drawers. I like that half pin height there to be the same as this height here, which I find looks nice at about 3/32. So I have my combination square here set to 3/32. So I just put a little ticky boo there, a little ticky boo on the other side. Then I'll just drop my gauge down. Mark those off. Actually, I guess I should have marked the other locations of the pins and stuff first, but I'm kind of nervous doing the first video. So, getting kind of forgetful. Next thing I'm going to do is mark off all of the pins. So what I'm going to do is use a set of dividers, put that first one onto the half pin here, and I just I'll walk it off. And what I'm looking for is I'm probably going to do, just for the sake of practice here, I'll do 4 tails across this board. So what you end up doing is, because I want this final half pin to be the same height, or the full pins to be the same height at the top as this half pin, I'll walk it off 1, 2, oh, my arm's right in the way there. Huh. This video thing's kind of weird and hard. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm looking for that fourth one to be right on the edge here. This board's a little bit narrower than the board I'm working with, so it'll take a little bit of futzing around to get this right, but I may be talking gibberish right now, but once you see what happens, it all becomes clear. It's pretty fun how this all works out. Oh, super close. Tiny little adjustment. Remember, every adjustment you're going to make here, it will be 4-fold on the other side. 2, 3, right on the edge. Okay, so now that I know that this gauge is set up to do this, we'll start at the other side. And now I'll give it a firm little push, leaving a little indent on the top of the end grain here. So 3, I don't need to worry about that. And then what I do is I go back to the other side, I start on that line that I just drew, and I'll go doot, 2, 3. And now I have a nice little spot for my pencil to just drop right into that little hole. So I'll put the pencil in the hole, marking gauge on, dovetail gauge on, and just lightly mark it. So I'm marking the tailboard here in pencil because what I saw here will become our pattern, our template for cutting our pins. So right now, this, as long as I'm square across the top, it doesn't really matter. As long as I'm square across the top here, it doesn't really matter how that angle comes out here, as long as it's square across the top, because we'll use this as a pattern later on. And now with these all sort of drawn in, you can see what I mean. The full pin's the same width as this half pin. So go ahead and I'll shade in all this waste. Because the last thing you want to do is cut all this and then use the fret saw to cope out or fret out the wrong side of the waste. So when I'm sawing, I think a lot of people, if you're not used to hand sawing, the sawing portion here is can be kind of difficult. I know some people who will start sort of sawing at the back, so they'll tip the saw up and then drop the saw in. I find that kind of hard because, if you're basically only catching at the back, it's really easy for those teeth to catch and then skip. So what I usually do is I'll pinch across. Oh, actually, it's a little easier for you guys to see it this way. I pinch across the board, and I use my fingers to set where that's going. So instead of just trying to saw this, I'll use my fingers and just pinch it. I'll lay the saw right at the tip, right with that pencil line, and I'll just nicely push. I'm going to go right to that just right to that baseline. So I always start on the left side, and I'll go this way, and then I'll turn back. So I find it's a lot easier to get a consistent angle if you just stay right with the same angles. So again, sort of pinch right across the end, and then you just want to hover it. You don't want to be firmly gripping the saw. Just nice light grip. Nice long strokes. You want to try to use the whole saw plate here. You know, people do like these hand joinery videos. You know, I plan on doing some, you know, some saw technique and some chisel technique videos. That'll be just about those sorts of things. But oops, that one wasn't quite far enough. But if you're, you know, you're having trouble sawing to a line, as I said before, just you know, clean up a board, make sure you know stay square, end grain. Then just mark off a bunch of lines and just practice sawing a line. So you know, do a whole end, cut it off again, square it up. Put more lines on, just keep practicing. I find woodworkers really weird about that. They want to build stuff, but they don't want to practice. You know, and everyone else practice. You know, sports, music, everyone else practice. But for whatever reason, woodworkers don't seem to like doing that. Oh yeah. What I'm doing here is just using my fret saw to just remove that waste to the baseline. So it's a nice thin little blade, so I can actually drop it right in that the kerf left from the saw. So I get to the bottom, and I just turn. So I'm just trying to go nice and tight with that. I don't want to have to be chopping this out. I want to be tight enough that I can just put my chisel into that line that we cut with the marking gauge, and then just chisel down. So if I keep going across square here, as soon as I hit that curve, it can skip over. So what I tend to do is I'll tilt the saw on an angle to cut the back side first. So if I do overcuts on the back side, you're never going to see that. So then just, you know, slow down as you get to it. And just, there's it pops. There you go. Sometimes with these small tails, it's nice and it's a little hard to pop that stuff out. So I know a lot of people who will, you know, turn this board to cut these half pins off. I have to cut them with a fret saw. As I said before, when I use the marking gauge here, I don't score that very hard when I'm going across, because you know, if I score right across that, when I put everything together, and then I hand plane everything smooth, you can end up with that knife line there, which shows up as a line later on. And you know, some people like that, some people don't. I'm on the don't camp. So after lightly doing that, I'll pencil that in. Once I cut the tails out, I'll actually take my marking gauge and I'll lay my board down. I'll just score just where the pin is, just a little bit deeper. I don't need to worry about doing that on the back where the rabbit is, because that rabbit there is already a nice little shoulder line that'll leave a nice crisp little spot. So next part is just chiseling this out. So just have a 1/4 inch chisel. I like the baseline here to be perpendicular to my body, so that when I'm putting the chisel in, I can see, you know, if it's square or not. So what I'll do is I'll chisel halfway down, and then I'll flip the board over, I'll chisel the other halfway down. I'm only going to chisel just the 3 full pins here, as I like to put the board into the vise, and then just chisel the half pins that way. So now with the board in my vise still, I'll just make sure I get right tight into those corners to clean it up. What I find helps is a lot of light. So now with my tailboard being complete, maybe not. Just oh, there it is. That being complete, now it's time to transfer those tails, that pattern, over to our pin board. So what I do is I'll put a hand plane, or if you don't have a hand plane, just a simple square block of wood will work fine for doing this as well. I'll take my my cleaned up end here. Oh. What I'll do is just line this up with the plane, make sure it's a little parallel, and then I just give it a smidge a little higher, just to make up for that rabbit here on the tailboard. So then I just lock that down in the vise, move the plane out. There we go. Now because of that rabbit, I can push down with my thumb, and then I grab, the board short enough, I can grab the back of it with my fingers and push that in, nice and lightly. If not, I can just go across it, push it down, and pull it in at the same time. Because this is pine, if I put my marking gauge in and then I mark all these out and I cut right to that line, you can end up with a bit of gaps because cut right to the lines can be on the line. It's easy to just smidge right over it. But luckily with pine, which is why I like it for practicing, is I'll mark these. We'll see the line, and then what I do is I will just stay just inside of the waistline, so that as I put these tails in, everything compresses. One of the problems with that is that this little half pin out here, as it compresses, that can actually split right off or split open. So I stay a lot closer to this line and that line, and then I'll come inside of the other lines. So again, I start with one side, I'll work one way, and I'll turn my knife around and work the other way. So I have a little spear point marking knife here to get into here. So to confirm that I can see everything and everything's there. Maybe a little harder for you folks to see that at home, but just trust me, it's there. So because this thickness with the with the rabbit is thinner than the actual board, I'll take a second gauge, or you can set up your your first gauge, reset it. Again, I just want to go a little bit thicker than those, a little bit thicker than the tail, so all this end grain will stick a little bit proud, and I can just flush that up later. Because the half pins are on the side, all I have to do is just mark the outside face and the inside face. So I'll mark the inside face a lot firmer than I will the outside face. Again, because I don't like that line. Then I will darken that. Now ideally I would have done this before I transfer the tails, but I'm forgetful. Let's put that back in. Again, level that, or square it up. then what I do is I will just draw my pencil. With the end where that knife line goes down, I will just put a little pencil line down. Because just as the tailboard, the end grain of the tailboard has to be square, this has to be square as well. So this pencil line here is not exactly where it needs to be, but it'll give me a reference to look at when I start sawing down there. There. You know, as I learned in construction, doing everything with more light than anyone will ever see will show any of the imperfections, so that when it's at natural light, hopefully you won't see anything. Oh. This is just a little too close. There you go. Oh, yes, and shade the waist. It's really easy to cut on the wrong side of the line, especially if you haven't cut a lot of dovetails. And even if you have cut a lot of dovetails, it's still easy. So where that line is, actually, that's a little harder for you guys to see. I'll manage. I wanted you to stay just inside that line. And again, you can see I'm just using that just as a reference. I'm actually, with where this pencil line is, I'm just splitting the line. I could try to quantify or measure how much exactly I'm leaving, but you're just gonna have to practice and let experience be your guide. I've heard it been referred to as half a bee's dick, but if you've ever seen a bee's dick relative to the size of its body, it's pretty huge actually. So again, coping saw in, or fret saw in. Oh, you know what? Almost forgot. I know this seems like another step, having to pull it out, but I don't like that line. So again, I'm just really forcing that gauge in just where the waist is. There you go. Okay. Batter, pitter patter. So saying I chisel right in the middle, and then I'll use the flat back of the chisel up against what I already chiseled, put it right into the corner, and then as I tap, I'll tilt that chisel to the side so I don't bruise the pin, really. So now that I've removed the bulk of the waist, put that back in. Then anytime I clean up, I always love just a little 1/4 inch. So let's make sure I get right into those corners. And if anything, I want it to be a little bit hollow here in the middle. So if you put chisel across the back from side, front to back, with your baselines where it won't rock at all. It'll lay nice and flat. Because if you have anything in the middle there, it'll stop your joint from closing up. Okay, beer break. Whenever I can, instead of just pushing my chisel straight across, what I like to do is I like to push in and then twist. In and then twist. Should just realize this isn't the best view to see the detail sort of chiseling of this. Okay, so now that everything's sort of cleaned up, what I'm gonna do is take my board, and I want to see a little dead blow hammer here, mallet. See if I can. Oh, that seems a little too tight. Just realize, see, I have a little bit of waste in that corner still. So if you're having trouble with the dovetail starting, what you can do is, the only thing that's seen here is outside face here and the end grain. You don't see any of this back in here. So I'll take a chisel and I'll just come in about 1/8 of an inch or so, and I'll just lightly chamfer that little area. So what I'll do is, instead of there being a firm step there, especially because these are cut very tight so that we end up with a nice tight fit later. But it's easy to break stuff off or not be able to get the joint to start to go. So we're just looking for it to be able to drop in and then compress. Clamp down my vise a little bit better. Let's see if I can tap this in. Nope. Okay. Still a little tight. So, if doing those corners isn't enough, you can also do sort of the inside faces right there. Right there. Ease those off a little bit. See, I'm starting to crush a tail there a little bit. Like right now, with everything that I've sawn, I'm not messing around with any of the show faces. I want all those to be left alone. The same thing I can do on the tail board, or the pin board, sorry. This outside face, and then the end grain is what's seen. So inside of that pin, I can still shave off a little bit in there, but only in the area that's not being seen. Sometimes even just using a chisel to sort of clean up that rough sawn area, because no matter how smooth of a sawyer you are, you still end up with little bits of steps. A little bit of texture to it. Just realized this video is going to be a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. Okay. So now that I've eased off all the areas that you're not going to see, hopefully that'll give everything enough room to drop in, and then everything will compress so that all the show faces end up looking really nice. And that's what it's going to do. Huzzah! It's got a tiny bit of a gap there, but people will judge their dovetails in the unglued state, but there's a tiny little pinhole there. I'll take a little piece of wood when I glue these up, shove the end grain in there like a little toothpick. Boom, never see that. A little bit of a gap right there. And that actually looks like because this tail was not sawn straight. So I can actually pop this apart right now and square that tail end up a little bit better and get rid of that gap there. So that's what we'll do just quickly. Close up a little bit. Once you glue this up, never going to see it. So, usually you'd wait till it's glued up to do this, but I'll do this now. So I just have a little number 4 here. The pins, there's a lot less surface area of the pins. It's easy to knock those down. The tails, I like to come in and angle from one side. And then come in from the other side. Because I don't want to catch this, the half pin and then blow that out at all. I want to be going into it. I'll get everything knocked down. And voila! A nice hand-cut dovetail. So if yours don't look like mine, don't worry about it. I've cut hundreds and hundreds of practice joints. When I first started getting into woodworking and stuff, I lived in a bachelor apartment, and I had no room to build any furniture or put it, nowhere to sell it, and it was never any good to sell then. So I just cut joint after joint after joint by hand. So it takes practice. It's worth the practice, and after your kids go to bed, if you have kids, or if you don't have kids, just grab a beer, put some music on, and enjoy yourself. Have some fun cutting some joints, and learning to do woodworking. I hope this video helped you. It's a little bit longer than I thought it was going to be, but we'll probably edit it down a little bit. So until next time. Have fun!